Here's Steve.
Construction code doors locked.
Oh.
I don't
Okay.
see many surgeons making that
I'll
many
have to,
mistakes and keeping
find
it
myself.
garage.
Somebody's flashing it.
Smile on your face doesn't get you very far with that one.
Breaking.
Come on, you're right on time.
It's 2:45. I'm way late.
So I think this is it. I will call this meeting to order. And let's start with the pledge as we do. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Did you have rotator cuff?
Yeah.
It's awful, isn't it?
It is. Roll call, please.
Sometimes.
Mr. Behrens?
Here.
It's
Mr.
better to leave it.
Christensen?
Yeah.
Mr. Frericks?
Yes. Present.
Ms. Lautner, Mr. Noonan, Mr. Popa, and Mr. Travis are all absent excused. Mr. Walter?
Here.
Mr. Wessel?
Here.
Mr. Yeomans?
Here.
6-4.
Seeing no public here for comment, we'll skip that and jump right to our single agenda item. Okay, I call this special session because I need two resolutions, two motions passed here they are recommendations, of course, to the Board of Commissioners, and I will take our results today to the Board of Commissioners next Tuesday. But I need both of these motions passed. I think I'll offer the first motion right now, and then we'll get in discussion. I'll explain why. But motion number one, I move that the Parks and Rec Commission recommend to the Board of Commissioners that we be permitted to apply for a Michigan DNR recreational passport grant instead of a Natural Resources Trust Fund grant.
Support.
Now, in discussion then, again, I'm asking, we're going to recommend to the full commission, I mean, this is what the motion is saying, that we will apply for recreational passport grant instead of a Resources Trust Fund grant. The reason for that shift, which has occurred in our thinking, my thinking, just in the last 2 weeks. This is coming about because I believe it was on January 10th, we finally got the state's promulgation of this year's scoring of grant applications. It became clear in doing this that we really have very little chance at all of being awarded a Natural Resources Trust Fund grant. For example, the last year I've been, well, first of all, the rules changed enough that it really has cost us to change, us being essentially myself and Goslin Zubek. The reason the change, for example, has come about is because I've worked the past year to make sure we had at least one good example of collaboration. I've used that term, the three of you who have been here before. And there were 30 points to be gained in establishing a acceptable collaboration. The word collaboration now doesn't even appear once in any location in the guidelines, the scoring of a Resources Trust Fund grant this year. It's not that work is for naught, it's still going to be valuable, but we no longer can gain 30 points in that category, probably not more than 10. Recreational passport grant is geared more towards development as opposed to acquisition. They do put up grants for development of properties that have already been acquired. We acquired Veronica Valley with the trust fund grant. I don't know if those three of you that were here, actually it would be 2 years ago, where there was discussion with Klaus about which do we choose, recreational passport or trust fund. At that point we chose trust fund for two reasons. It required less of a match and it allowed us to go for a bigger bite, a bigger plan. It is now, this is one of the rules that changed. I rejected 2 years ago the strategy of going for a passport grant because it required a 50% match from the county. That rule has changed. We can now name the match we want to make between 25 and 50%. So we can choose a lower required, a lower grant. It is true that recreational passport still has a maximum size of the grant you're asking for. 150,000 is the most we can ask for with recreational passport, and it was 250 or 350 for a trust fund grant. So the decision 2 years ago, we'll go for trust fund because it's a lower match and because it allows us to design a bigger project and go for a bigger bite. It's become clear that that isn't going to work. So a better strategy with better chance of any success is to pare back our plan, which will be presented. The pare back will be presented to you in detail more detail than this morning, next Wednesday at a regular full session. But again, I'm asking us to approve my going to the Board of Commissioners with our recommendation that we go for this other grant instead of the original one. Basically for that reason, because we believe, our consultant and myself believe, we have a much better chance of winning, getting some success with the passport grant.
Have you decided on a match? The initial grant request was committed 90,000, right?
95,000.
95,000. Do we have a better shot at it if we do 50% match?
Well, we would certainly have a better shot at it given the three possible outlines possible plans that I've seen outlined rudimentarily last week from Gaza and Zubek. I was kind of interested in what came out to a 39% match, but we'll sort that out in some more detail.
So we would keep the amount of money that we're asking for from the county commissioners.
If you
about the
recall,
same.
well, if you recall the money we asked for, or the grant match that was in our initial request to the Board of Commissioners, that we be allowed to be permitted to make this application, it was stated with a match of up to 95,000, not specifically 95, but up to. So
even at 50% of 150 is less than what they approved for already. So if you went 50%, but you said you're looking at 39%.
well, that's real preliminary on my part to say that three outlines I saw, I thought, well, the 39% looks like, but we really have to next week be clear on the scope of what we're asking for, how much have we pared it back to. There's some details we're all going to have to sort in that. If I may, Laurel, in my first motion here, I didn't say that we would be permitted to apply for a recreational passport grant instead of Natural Resources Trust Fund grant with a match of up to 95,000. Do you think that needs to be included in there? We stated
It probably won't hurt.
Yeah, because we stated that in the original request, whatever, a month ago, for the trust fund grant. We said with a commitment to a match of up to 95,000.
And Steve will be there as well at the meeting.
I'll support that change, and I'll be there when I need to be there.
Yeah, not next week so much, because I'll still be there. So, amended, to be clear. My motion is that I move that the Parks and Rec Commission recommend to the Board of Commissioners that we be permitted to apply for a Michigan recreational passport grant instead of a trust fund grant with a county match of up to $95,000. And I suspect that politically we may next week choose a package that will lower the match amount, which will be a little more attractive then to the entire commission. Don, you had-
I'm assuming from what you're saying, we can apply for both.
We can apply for both. We can apply for up to 3. We have to identify the priorities for second and third.
I mean, apply for the parks, for the natural resources, and apply for the passport.
Yes.
Same grant, two different agencies within the state.
They're actually 2 different grants, programs within the same agency of the state. I think.
The grant program, what we're asking for is the same thing, is what I'm saying. We're gonna submit a grant to, I guess I get this right, to the passport people. We're gonna submit the same grant to the
No.
natural resources. Cannot do that.
No, well, we can,
Why
but
not?
the Resources Trust Fund grant would be a bigger request. So it isn't the exact same, and we're not plugging in the same numbers in 2 different grant programs.
But it's for the same purpose, just a little bit of expansion on the line.
Yeah, one would be asking for more money, the trust fund, which I'm saying I just don't see us having any potential.
So you just want to abandon that entirely because you don't feel it.
That's my recommendation, is that we now,
My assumption is the work's been done on that already. Is that not true? Why not submit it, and also select one for the passport grant? And the other one, I said, can you submit 2 grants to, like the natural resources? Last time we were here, you said no, because you have to prioritize and make this into a problem. You want to prioritize this one. It's the same thing you're asking for.
no, you still have to say which, even if they were identical requests, you still have to say which one is your priority.
Even though they're different agencies
Yes.
in the central.
Yeah.
Plus, we were turned down pretty hard on the last go-around with the DNR. And if you're not feeling comfortable about getting even close again, there really isn't no sense in it.
Yeah. Based on the application of 2 years ago, we need to get 30 more points, or at least 30 more points over what we got last time, which was about 270, 272, something like that. We thought this collaboration and maybe a few other tweaks would get us there. The collaboration doesn't even exist, it just disappeared. Our big chance of gaining some points this time comes in a more detailed statement of the operational and maintenance budget for the specific items that we will build, create, if we were awarded this grant. We need to submit, and we've got, this is not a time critical because our budget determinations from Parks and Rec is in June, and we can submit a preliminary statement of operations maintenance budget by April 1st. We can upgrade that and submit the proper documentation in September. So we have our June budget planning for Parks and Rec for the coming year. The paperwork trail that comes out of that, we can put in as part of the application in September. So we've got time to detail this improved O&M budget in order to gain the largest possible points there. Recreational passport is specifically, there's no portion of a recreational passport grant, there's no category within that goes for acquiring new property. It's all about development. It is, I've come to understand this week with Patty's help, that the development has to be either new or renovating. For example, the previous Natural Resources Trust Fund grant had improvements in the parking lot as part of the grant request. that's not gonna fly with the whole parking lot. Not the paving of disabled parking, but the grading of the parking lot, putting in this reestablishing the center divider so we get a more identified traffic flow, and that's all gonna be considered general maintenance. And the passport grant will not pay for maintenance, it will only pay for new or new construction or redoing an existing, either building a whole new bathroom or renovating one that's there, so to speak. We're gonna try to get some points with improvements in the approach to the bridge as improvements of an already existing recreational facility. Now, counting the bridge as a recreational facility is gonna be part of the trick, but that
Loophole.
we'll say, we'll state it as best we can and see how we do.
You got to go.
I'm sorry, but I have to go. Can I call the question? Can we vote on this and then you can have further discussion?
Yes, we have another one to move on to.
I know, but I have to be at the airport at 10:30.
Let's move.
So I'll call the question. All in favor of the first motion, giving me permission to ask permission to go for this natural resources, or no, for this passport, recreation passport plan. Aye?
Aye.
In favor? Nay? Okay, it passes. Second motion. I move that we recommend to the Board of Commissioners to hold a public input session on the recreational passport grant application at 8:30 a.m. on Tuesday, March 10th, prior to the county board's regularly scheduled March executive board session.
Support.
The critical thing here is we no longer need a hearing as it's defined by the state. We simply need to document that we've had some sort of public input session. It means we don't have the 30-day requirement for publicizing this. We do think because the county board is not going to see this final plan, that you'll see some, most of next Wednesday. They won't have a chance to see any of that until this executive session. But I've learned that we need to recommend to them what it's going to be, a public input session prior to, it needs to be that executive meeting in March. It's the only timing schedule that will work. So we're proposing 8:30 on Tuesday, March 10th for a public input session immediately prior to the executive. All those in favor?
Aye.
Somebody make a motion? Did somebody make a motion?
I made the motion.
Oh, you made the
and I
motion,
heard
okay.
the
And I
second on it.
support it.
Okay.
Any opposition? Motion passes.
See you, Wes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Be safe.
So.
Well, we can't hold that you no longer have your quorum, so just zip through this real quick.
I'm sorry?
You don't have a quorum now, so zip through this real quick. You just have public comment, you can,
Let's end the meeting.
End the
what you're
meeting.
saying.
Are you done with the business?
We are done with the business, and I was going to move on to a motion to adjourn, but public comment, we have no public comment. Board comment, commissioner comment,
Motion to adjourn.
second. All in favor?
Aye.
okay.
There we go.
No worries.
Thank you. Will you call Chet?
I will.
Tell him I'm on my way?
Okay.
Thanks. Have a good weekend, guys.
You too.
19 minutes, that's pretty good. You said 15. I'm impressed.
Laurel, am I free to answer any other questions?